Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Coffee Chats with Coach Candy. We are in episode 48. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your water. Welcome to a Monday mindset session. We're going to continue to dig into strategies on how to destroy the noise. So excited that you're here. Good morning, Myra, Deborah, and Yvette. Welcome. Good to see you all this morning. I'm a little rough around the edges. Had a hard night's sleep last night. Good morning, Elaine. So good to see everybody. Good morning. Hope y'all slept better than I did. I don't know what. I don't know if it's the new moon coming in or what, but did my evening ritual last night and did not sleep so well. So we'll see how alert my brain is this morning. Namaste, Mateo. Namaste. Good morning. So glad to have y'all here. Give everybody just a second to jump on. It is Monday, and sometimes people are moving a little slower, so all good. Good morning, good morning. Yes, I am going to be definitely taking my coffee this morning. I was actually going to do a little green tea, but man, I'll tell you what, I did not sleep well last night. And we're going to talk about some of that filters and frames. I think I had a little noise going on in my head myself. So we're going to talk about that and make sure that you guys have more strategies to continue to get rid of the noise. Ooh, I think I'm going to sneeze. So anyway, how was everybody's weekend? Did you do anything exciting? How's everybody feeling on a new Monday morning? We are ready to dig in. Have a great week. But how's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? I agree with the moon theory. Did not sleep well either. Good. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one. I tried everything last night. I even did hot tea. I listened to some really good, the right frequency music, everything. And I tossed and turned like a crazy person last night. In fact, my bed looked like I had a massive fight this morning. So it was a little rough around the edges. Good morning, Cynthia. So good, I'm glad to know I wasn't the only one. And hopefully that doesn't impede anyone in getting a jump start on a fabulous and fantastic week. So we are going to continue to talk about the noise. I know last week I opened up some things to really, yes, ready for a new week. Yes, good morning. I've got my coffee too, Cynthia. Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to actually take a sip because I need some this morning. So that being said, I want to continue to jump into the noise. Created some deeply needed sacred space on my patio. Ooh, I love that. Yeah, this weekend felt like it was definitely a good space for some sacred space. I know I got to a point Friday night where, and that might be why I didn't sleep so well too. I got to a point where there's a difference in just being physically tired and exhausted and being soul tired. And I was really in a space where my soul needed to rest. So I think creating that sacred space to honor yourself, that sacred space to understand sometimes when we just need to bring it down. We need that peaceful space. I know Friday I was talking about I was a little exhausted. So it really moved more into a soul space for me, which meant that I kind of unplugged Saturday. I didn't talk to a lot of people. I just did some quiet space for myself. And we need that. We need to be able to have that space where we can recharge. And so, yeah, awesome. I love that it was a beautiful weekend. You met walking Saturday and Sunday. Good morning, Deborah. Yep, sleep was a bit hard, working on a problem while sleeping. Yeah, and so we're going to talk about that because I do think I've had some noise myself recently. I had a really tough end of last week. Just some things hitting in my business, some things that, good morning, Michael. Ready to start a new week. Excellent. Glad that you joined us. It's so nice to have you here after awesome attending convention last week. Long day, so a little tired. Love that. Love that you are here. Welcome. That's so fantastic. Yeah, and so I want to talk about that because I know for me the week got a little tough. There was just some things that hit my business, some things that creep in. And, no matter how much you do this work, there's always the opportunity and space where noise can creep in. And for those of you that may not have joined us before, just to kind of recap what we're going to be digging into more, noise, the way I define it, is noise is the negative self-talk, filters, and frames that we create. The O is the opinions of others that we choose to internalize. The I is the inefficiencies that we're creating in our life on a daily basis. And a lot of times that comes from our inability inability to say no to the things that don't serve us, or say yes to the right things, right? Or the inability to properly qualify and dequalify opportunities and people showing up. And so when I think about, and then the S is the shoulding, we do all over ourselves, and you can translate that any way you want. And then the E is the excuses that we create, perpetuate. And so for a while, we're going to stay in the N, which is the negative self-talks, filters, and frames. And last week, we got into the space around I am sorry, right? I'm sorry versus I apologize. Thank you, help me understand, I appreciate, whatever that might be. And today I want to talk more about the frames within that I am space and the justing space. And so what do I mean by that? As you recall from last week, when we talked about I am really is two of the most powerful words we can put together in the English language, because even scripturally, depending on what you believe or don't believe, but scripturally, if you look at the Bible, if you look at what it says, I mean, even God defined himself in the Bible to Moses as I am that I am. And that was all he defined himself with. And when you think about the space of I am, and you think about in spirituality and in religious sectors, in, like I said, in scriptures, in things that go beyond, even the Bible, where you see I am, it's so powerful, right? And so it really matters what you put behind that phrase. And a lot of times we're not being really mindful. We're not being intentional about our I am and what comes after that. And a lot of times it's either the I am or the I am not, right? And so it can be anything from I am not capable of this, or I am, and here's where the just comes in. And a lot of times we filter, and it's interesting because I did a training last week even, and it's interesting how many people say I'm just this, or I'm just only able to do whatever. And so that justing really shortchanges that I am. And so think about, for example, if you're a new entrepreneur, for instance, and you're like, well, I'm just a new entrepreneur. I'm just a little green. I'm just inexperienced. I'm just this. I want you to think about for a moment, does that affect how you show up and how you engage and how you interact with other people? And I want you to think about those potential limiting frames around how you choose to define yourself. And again, it goes in that space of I am, and it goes in that space of what you believe. Do you think that if you said something like, well, I'm just a new entrepreneur, I don't know how to do this, do you think you show up in conversations with potential big prospects, big clients, big investors, big whatever, do you think you show up differently as a result? So I want to ask that question because I want you to kind of settle into that a little bit, and I want you to think about whether or not that affects how you show up energetically, how you show up from a confidence standpoint, how you show up from a belief standpoint. Does it matter the frames and the filters that you use? And so I'm curious, what are the thoughts for those of you that are on this morning? What do you think? Is it a space where how you think, and by the way, it's not just what you say out loud. A lot of times people say, well, I don't say those things to myself. And it's like, yes, and do you think those things? Because your thoughts are incredibly powerful. Your thoughts are actually more powerful than even what you speak, because your thoughts are the tapes that you're playing over and over again. And so I'm curious, for some of you that are on this morning, what are your thoughts about that? What do you think? Do you think it affects how you show up energetically, how you show up intentionally, purposely, and how people get to engage with you or not based on the filters and frames you put out there? Let's see, what are you saying? Mateo, absolutely. It programs you and everyone else to limit their expectations of you. That's really powerful. So think about that for a minute. It's programming you, and it's programming other people in terms of what to expect from you. That's a really limiting space. And so Yvette, ooh, yes, I'm guilty of justing. Yes, there's a lot of us that are guilty of justing. So first of all, thank you for owning that, because it's only when we have that recognition and ownership that we can choose to do something differently. But I want you to think about this idea that honestly, you have two sides of your brain. You have the subconscious side of your brain, which is this part that's not fully present all the time. It's the tape that's running all the time. It's where your core beliefs come from. And then there's this conscious part of your mind, and it's what you are being present, or sometimes not, but it's where you're speaking your truth and things along those lines. What I want you to realize that on a subconscious level, your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. And so I want you to think about that, because sometimes we'll say things like, oh, I'm just joking. But what happens is when you use that language over and over and over again, to what Mateo's saying, it creates a program. It creates a tape that starts to play that actually affects your belief system. It affects how you show up in that space, and it affects what other people start to expect from you as a result. But what happens on a subconscious level is when you feed certain phrases, when you feed certain words, and you could say something like, oh, I'm so stupid. And you're like, oh, I'm just kidding, haha. On a universal law level and on a spiritual level and on a subconscious level, that joking doesn't matter. They don't know, there's no distinction between, oh, I'm just joking and I'm just playing around, versus, no, I keep saying these words over and over again. So therefore, I start tapping into a belief that starts to wire that programming and starts to effectively change the way I show up. And so I want you to think about that. Think about if you're struggling a little bit in your confidence. Think about if you're not getting the results you want when you're engaging with people and you're having these incredible conversations. Ask yourself where the blocks are. Ask yourself where the limiting beliefs are. And limiting beliefs might even occur in this space. And I've referenced this book a few times, but I'm going to reference it again. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks talks about your upper limits. Love that book. One of my absolute favorite books, hands down, one of my top 5. And really easy book to read, but really phenomenal information about our upper limits. And sometimes they show up in terms of our physical limitations. And I look back at, I've had 5 surgeries in my life. I was an athlete, been an athlete my whole life. I've had 3 knee surgeries, an Achilles surgery, and another surgery in addition to that. And I think about when those surgeries, when that need for a surgery showed up, it was usually right about when I was going to break through in a massive way. And what I realize is when I go back and I look at that, is that there was a limiting belief. There was a space that said, I can only be this successful. I can only be this happy. I can only have this much joy or love. And if you think back to Brené's Netflix special where she talks about joy, there's that foreboding joy, like we don't believe we're allowed to have this, right? And so we just on ourselves and we say, well, I just need that. I just, I'm only just this. And so therefore we have this whole fight with ourselves about, well, I don't want to look at wanting anything that's too materialistic, or I don't want to have anything that's going to create too much success or too much joy. And what happens is we create these frames, we create these limits that start to break us down on a subconscious level and start to create this tape or this programming that we don't even know we're playing over and over and over again. And it so is a deep seed for our confidence, for our ability to show up, for our ability to step through and have courage. And so I want you to think about that for a minute. I want you to think about, where are their upper limits? Where are their beliefs on a subconscious level that say things like, I'm not worthy of that, or I'm just this, or anytime we say I'm just anything, we are limiting the full capacity of how we can stand in our magnificence. And so I even think about it, and I'm going to give you an example. I had a client who he and I were really working on some of his upper limits. He was a corporate IT guy, and we were doing a lot of one-on-one coaching, a lot of spacing. And I remember, think about even this frame, and this is where the just comes in, or the filters and the frames come in. And he's like, and it wasn't even really a just, it was more of a filter and frame. But all of a sudden he got excited because we were working on introducing some new things that would help him shift his subconscious model, shift the way he was thinking, shift his belief system. And I remember having a conversation, and he got so excited on the phone because he wanted to share something with me. He's like, oh, Candy, I want to share this with you. I found this book. And I was so listening because he was charged up. He was energetic. I was like right there with him. I'm like, yes, tell me all about it. And then he did this. And I want you to think about how this frame shut down the conversation. He then said, well, I know it's a little hokey and a little cheesy. And I instantly said, and he kept going, and I said, stop. And he said, what? And I said, I'm done. I'm done listening. You just told me that it's not worth my time to invest in the rest of this conversation. And so I want you to think about that. I want you to think about, he was all excited. He was all fired up. And then somewhere in his mind, he played that tape. He played that, well, this is just a blah, 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 or I'm just being ridiculous right now, or whatever it was that he played in his mind. And he immediately shifted and said, well, this is really cheesy and kind of hokey. And then he got into this whole self-deprecating space around wanting to share something that he was really passionate about. How many times do we do that? We're like, oh, this is just dumb, or this is really stupid, or they're just not going to like this anyway, or I know you're going to laugh. think about that. We start sentences. I know you're going to laugh, or I know you're going to think this is cheesy, or I know you're going to think this is stupid. Well, what happens is when you say that, when you introduce that filter on a subconscious level for that other person, they've immediately shut you down. And that's where you get somebody that's looking at you just doing the head nod, and somebody that's just kind of agreeing with you, but in their mind, they're doing the mental checklist of their grocery list. Or they're thinking about every errand they have to run, but they're not engaged with you anymore. Because on a subconscious level, you have indirectly said, well, what I'm about to say is not important, so I wouldn't pay attention if I were you. So I want you to think about that, because when Sean did that, we were in this conversation, we were all lit up, and I was like, stop. I'm like, I'm done. And he goes, what? And I said, had you just stayed in a place to be passionate and to share your love of something, I would have been so intrigued by your energy that I would have went out and checked out this book regardless. But the minute you qualified it, the minute you put a filter on it that said it's not enough, that it's just hokey, that it's just cheesy, I'm not going to invest my time and energy in it anymore. Because if you think about it, we have so many things that are coming at us. We're inundated all the time with social media, with email, with phone calls, with people, with messages, with the news, with whatever. We have to have a filtering system. And so when somebody else already puts a filter on it, our brain says, thank you, I don't have to participate. And I want you to think about where that's showing up for you. How many ways are you pre-qualifying or filtering in a way that's shutting down the conversation because you're creating dismissive language that's not allowing you to show up and allowing someone? And so when you think about, we talk a lot about, leadership is a choice. It's a choice in how you show up, choose to show up, how you choose to serve others, and how you choose to take that personal responsibility. I want you to also think about those 3 questions when you have to ask yourself, am I playing small? The answer is yes. If you have to ask the question, you know the answer. And the 3 questions are, who am I not serving right now? Whose permission am I taking away? And when you create that filter or that dismissive state, you are inadvertently creating that space where you're taking someone's permission away. And then the 3rd piece is, who are you not letting shine their light because you're not asking for help or you're not showing up for them? And so I'm curious, as I'm saying that, good morning, Winnie. What's showing up? Good morning. Yvette, we are so afraid of what other people think. Absolutely. Good morning, Carol. We are absolutely so afraid of what other people think that we prejudge. Here's the thing. First of all, and I had a great mentor that said this, everybody's going to judge you. We all judge. It's human nature to have an initial opinion, initial reaction, initial something. And most people, when they judge you, are not making it about you. The minute they judge you, all attention goes back to them because they're freaking out about, it's a mirror back to them. And so we are so afraid to be criticized and judged. And we're going to talk about this more when we get into the E. But what happens is we're so afraid that someone's going to reject us. Someone's going to criticize us. Someone's going to make fun of us, that we pre-criticize and judge ourselves before we even show up, which means we're not showing up. And so this is where I want you to think about how powerful the filters and frames are, and that negative space where we self-deprecate, we have all this noise that just spews all over us, is when we show up in that space, we're effectively not showing up. Because what happens is we're dimming our light. We're limiting our ability to show up in our most magnificent, powerful, highest and best self. And we are starting to pre-qualify, well, that person's just going to make fun of me anyway, so I might as well self-deprecate and do it on my terms instead of theirs. And what happens is we make assumptions. We make assumptions all the time, and we don't give people permission to show up and decide how they want to engage with us, how they want to value with you. Please, there are so many times, and like I said, I had a bunch of noise this weekend. I've had some stuff going on in my head as well. And I mean, even this morning I had one, I'm like, man, I'm tired, I'm not having a good hair day, and all these things I could have let stop me from showing up. Or I can say, you know what, I have a message, and it doesn't matter if my hair is out of place, or it doesn't matter if I got some bags under my eyes. What matters is that I show up, because I don't get to decide how you guys take this information and what you do with it. All I'm responsible for, and I want you to really think about this in terms of responsibility, the only thing that you are responsible for is what you believe, what you expect, what you think, what you say, and what you ultimately do. You are not responsible for what someone chooses to do with that, especially when you show up in the best intention of who you are from the best place. What someone else chooses to do with it, whether they choose to be offended, whether they choose to judge you, whether they choose to criticize you. First of all, none of that's about you, and to begin with, none of that is about you. It's about their own fear, their own insecurities, the mirror being held up, whatever it is. 99% of the time, that is not about you at all. And so the fact that we fear this judgment and criticism, and when in reality, it's not even about us, it's about whatever's triggering or being held up as a mirror for someone else. When you realize that that's happening no matter what, it starts to take some of that pressure off to say, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be, everything all the time. I just have to be me. I have to be me that's raw and real in a way that I can show up, and I need to just let people decide. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many people liked me. At the end of the day, it's, did I show up as my best self? Did I show up from a place to show up? Did I show up to serve? And am I being authentic and standing in integrity with who I am? Because when it comes down to it, the only thing that matters is, at the end of the day, can you say, I'm in alignment with who I am? I am standing in a space to be connected to my core values, and I know in my heart of hearts that I did the very best I could. Did I get it perfectly right? Hell no! And that's okay. Did I show up in the best way I possibly could show up today? And can I make peace with that so that I can go to sleep and can go to bed and have a peaceful, restful night's rest? Then yes. And so when you can ask yourself those things, it helps you start to work through the limiting factors and the filters and the frames that we're creating. And so what I want you to do, here's a little homework assignment for you. If you're finding that your conversations, you're not getting what you need from them, or if you're finding that your confidence is a little low, or you're finding that even energetically you're feeling a little tapped out, I want you to ask yourself, what's the story you're telling yourself? And so think about Brene Brown saying, the story I'm telling myself is, and I want you to ask yourself, what's the story I'm telling myself, and where's that coming from? What's the limiting belief that I'm holding on to? And imagine if I choose to step past that. Imagine if I choose to step beyond that. We're going to be working all week on some various tools to help clear out these frames. Today's about the awareness. This is the mindset piece. This is you getting into a space, like Yvette said, ooh, I do a lot of jesting, right? Where are you creating upper limits? Where are you creating these barriers? And this is what they are, they're barriers, because they're stopping you from showing your light. So I want you to think about the fact that ask yourself, where am I dimming my light? Where am I playing small? Where am I? Because the thing is, it's not, are you? The question is, where? And so I think about the fact that there was an interesting it's not Brene Brown's Call to Courage, where she says, look, it's not about whether or not you have biases. It's about what biases do you have. And I want you to think about the same thing. It's not about, do I have filters and frames? It's about, which filters and frames do I have? We all, even for those of us that have done our work for years and years and years, and we teach this and we're in this space, we all have work that we're continually doing, and every human being has filters and frames and triggers and insecurities and fears and limiting beliefs and things that they are constantly working through. And when you accept responsibility that you are a work in progress, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of which ones, and how can I lean in and get curious so that I can say, oh, okay, I see that now. And you know what? That's ineffective, and that's not working to help me show up at my highest and best level. I'm going to take time to really focus on how to clear that one out, or what's the strategies I need to lift that one up. So I'm curious, what's showing up for you guys as we're talking about this? A lot of times when we talk about filters and frames and triggers and noise, there's things that already start bubbling to the surface in terms of upper limits or beliefs or things that you're like, how, I never thought about that, but that is absolutely getting in my way. And like I said, if you haven't read The Big Leap, I highly suggest it, because he talks about different ways that upper limits show up. And for me, a lot of times it shows up physically. I either get like knocked down for 3 weeks, or like I said, I've had an injury, I've had surgeries, I've had different things that when I'm about to bust through my next level, which for those of you that weren't on right away in the morning, I mentioned that I didn't sleep well. I am going through massive shifts right now, and I can feel it. I'm breaking through some major limiting beliefs for myself to get to my next level. And so, the new moon's coming in, and it's a great time to actually manifest what's the next phase. And I can feel that. It's one of those reasons why I honored the fact that I was so tired this weekend, is because I'm going through a massive shift. There are some major things that have been happening over the last couple months that have really pushed me out of my comfort zone and are really asking me to stand in a more courageous space. And with that, my upper limits and my limiting beliefs are trying to fight back a little bit, and I can feel that. And so a lot of times that can be energetically exhausting, and I honor that. I know that this space where I'm kind of swirling around a little bit. I feel like a tornado that's just kind of like, right? And I feel a little discombobulated, and I feel like I'm kind of all over the space. I also honor and have so much gratitude for the fact that I'm spinning around like a little bit of a washing machine right now, because I know that where I come on the other side is going to be the space I couldn't even imagine. And I know that I need to go through the turbulence in order to get there. And so anytime you're feeling that kind of conflict within yourself or that turbulence, know that you're in that space where you're shifting, and you're also fighting the resistance from some of those upper limits and some of those beliefs that you've been carrying on. So any other thoughts? I'm curious what's showing up for you guys. I'm going to take a breather for a second and let you guys weigh in, because I've been kind of like charged up this morning. So what's showing up for y'all? Anything. I'd love to hear some comments from you. You guys are a little quiet this morning. I know it's Monday. I know this is a lot to digest. And like I said, as kind of a challenge for you, an invitation, I want you to be able to sit in a place where you can actually ask yourself, what's holding me back right now? What's the story that I'm anchored in? Where's my belief coming from? Because it's only when, and it's why I like to call some of you out when you share your vulnerability, you share that kind of aha moment, because it's only when you have that awareness that you can create the change. You've got to name the space before you can get in and say, okay, what's the strategies I need? How do I need to get through this? What do I lean into? It's that space of saying, I got to understand what it is first. So that I stop just swirling around and I can get myself to just pause. And sometimes the best thing you can do when that turbulent storm's coming is to just try to be still in that, just to listen to what your body's saying, listen to what your mind's saying. Yvette, let's see, I had learned from you in the past that we can't make a decision for someone else. Very true. That we can't prejudge. So sometimes I'm inclined to assume that someone will or will not decide to do something, but I stop myself and then simply ask the question and let them decide. Absolutely. Here's the thing. We do that all the time. We set a limit where we go, well, they're going to say no anyway. Think about how much of a filter and frame that is and a barrier when we go in and say, well, I don't know why I'm going to ask because they're going to say no anyway. Ooh, you so energetically show up in that space, and you've just zapped out all of your confidence, and you're not going to be courageous, because more than likely you're either going to cop out on the request or you're not going to ask at all, right? And so you're going to water down the request, and you're going to kind of be passive aggressive, and you're going to kind of do the dance around it instead of simply saying, you know what, I need some help here, or could I ask you, are you interested in this, or would you like to engage this way? We're so afraid of rejection. We're so afraid of being criticized and made fun of that we often do exactly what Yvette's saying, and it's that space of prejudging the situation, prejudging that person. We also think, and I just posted a really powerful post yesterday. It was about it's actually a true story, and it was about a teacher who at one point was dismissing a student because she was very clear he was lazy, he wasn't putting in the work, and it was only when she read his file that she found out that he had gone through a tremendous loss. He went through painful loss of losing his mother at a very, very early age, at 2nd or 3rd grade. And by the time she had him in her 5th grade or 6th grade class, at that point he had really shut down. He felt lost. He wasn't. And so it was only when she just chose to step up and see him instead of making the preliminary judgments and assumptions that she was able to serve him in the highest and best capacity, and to the point where now he works for a hospital and he's got a wing named after him and all these different amazing things. And he tells her every year, he sends her letters saying, you were the most important teacher I ever had. And he's like, you were the best teacher I ever had. And she told him, no, you were the person that taught me how to teach. And I think about that, and it gets me so, like, just really hits me, because even for myself, I mean, trust me, I'm not perfect in this in any way, and find myself having the rash judgments that are beliefs that we get from our family, right? Think about everything that's going on in the world right now and how much we're so quick to make a rash judgment based on one side of what we see, or based on what we were told growing up, or based on what we were given culturally, that we don't take the time to lean in to say, is that really truth? Or am I really just stepping into someone else's bias and allowing them to feed what is my truth, because I'm not taking the time to really see those people? And so I think about how powerfully this shows up in our culture. We have so many filters and frames right now. And I'm not dismissing the fact that there's some really ugly, really challenging things going on. And I would also offer that some of that ugliness is coming from a place of everybody making judgments and assumptions instead of us collectively leaning in and trying to get to the root cause, or trying to really see people for who they are and trying to understand the issues. We're so quick to blame. We're so quick to judge. We're so quick to put these filters and frames out there that we're missing the opportunities to deeply connect with people. And we don't know the magnitude right now of where people's fears are. We don't know the magnitude of where they're suffering. We don't know what they're going through that's traumatic. And every person has suffering. Every person has something that's going on. And when we choose not to lean in and we choose to rely, like what Yvette's saying, and we make these assumptions and we think, oh, I'm just doing it my conversation. Well, what happens is there's a stacking, right? And think about that. If every one of us is making just these small assumptions on our individual conversations, how is that starting to magnify and become something that is even bigger, multiply, when we look at it on conversations on a global level, or on a cultural level, or on a government level, or on a political level, or on an economic level? Everything that we do in our day-to-day life has a multiplying factor and has a ripple effect. And so if we think we're not responsible for what's going on right now, the shitstorm that's happening, we are sadly mistaken. Because every time we make an assumption, every time we make a judgment, every time we create those barriers, that then has a ripple effect for belief that people are carrying forward. And we have, myself included, a responsibility to really get mindful about where we're making those judgments, where we're making those criticisms, and where we're making those assumptions. Because no matter what, they never serve. It is not us allowing someone to show up and allowing them to be their best and highest self when we've already decided who they're going to be and how they're going to show up. And so I say that, it's my little soapbox. Thank you, Yvette. Martha, I am going through this in my job search, the fear of interview rejection, iterations, and no before finding a yes. Yeah, that's really common for people that are in that transition space, right? Where they feel that they're going to say, no, I'm not qualified. I'm too old. I haven't been in the industry long enough. My experience isn't, I'm just this, right? And what happens is when you go in from a different perspective and stop allowing the fear and the assumptions to hold you back, you can go up and say, what if, imagine if I could enter into a conversation where I could find the right company, where I believe in their mission and their movement, and I want to get engaged with that, and I know that I could bring value to that. And so, like I said, I'm going to give you some tools this week on how to clear some of those frames out. One of them I just recently received. One of them I actually got from my dear friend, Winnie Curley, who's on this morning. Some of those are some spaces where there are some great tools that we get that can help us reset, be more mindful and present, and allow ourselves to clear that frame. And so, Martha, in your case, I would actually say when that shows up, ask yourself the questions, is that serving me right now? And think about what's the worst that could happen in that space. And then what I want you to do is I want you to shift and go, okay, now that I've given that some energy, I want to shift all that energy into a space to say, now imagine what would be the most amazing outcome. Imagine if instead of fearing the no, that I was able to open up a yes that was so powerful to let me deeply connect into someone's mission, that allowed me to play in a space where I could bring such tremendous value that it could have impact like this, and play the imagine if, right? Because a lot of times we play that doomsday what if the sky is falling. And what I want you to do is when that what if shows up, play the worst case scenario once, and then move into a space to say, what's the imagine if, and give yourself the 5 levels of that. So maybe it's the imagine they say yes. Imagine they say yes, and there's actually a position that's created around my best talent that actually allows me to shine my light the most. Imagine if I could step into that role and succeed so well that I'm giving permission to other people around me to lift themselves up so that we're all playing a higher game. Imagine if the work I'm doing for this company allows us to impact X, Y, and Z, which is so near and dear to my heart. You see where I'm going. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to put the 5th one in space. So I want you to play in that space. I want you to shift that frame. Winnie, I have had to learn to make a clear request for support rather than beat around the bush to test what the other person might be open to doing for me. Oh my gosh, I so can relate to that. I just had to do that this weekend. And oh my God, that was not an easy space for me at all. Taking the risk for a clear yes or no had been empowering for me and made the relationships cleaner and easier. I love that. Yes and no are complete sentences. And when you give someone the opportunity, when you help someone say yes and honor their no and allow people to say yes or no and not the yeah, maybe kind of passive aggressive sort of halfway between, it is a much kinder conversation and you actually will deepen your relationships. When you say no to someone, when you can't show up and help them, no is much kinder than saying, well, yeah, maybe, I'm not sure, that watered down, because all you're doing is delaying the inevitable and you're creating false hope, which is not kind. And so absolutely agree with that so much, Winnie. And I have to say, it's still a space where I am a work in progress for sure. That is one of my most challenging spaces, is being able to ask for what I actually need and being able to be clear in the ask and being able to be okay with the yes or no either way, but honoring and having the courage for myself to be empowered to ask. Asking is not easy for me. And so I did. I was a bit courageous this week and I reached out to a friend and said, do you have a minute? I really need a friend right now. And it was very hard. And she even acknowledged, she said, I know that was hard for you to reach out and I'm so proud of you. And I was like, okay, I'm working on it. So I absolutely agree, but there's so much inside of that. Because when we truly show up for others, and sometimes it's letting others shine their light, it's in the ask. We give others permission to do the same. And so I love that, Winnie. Thank you so much for sharing that. Mateo, it is taking responsibility to own the biases and where they are from, ourselves or external. Absolutely. And we have such an opportunity right now to own those biases, because the thing is, it's not whether we have biases, it's what biases, what filters, what frames, what judgments, what assumptions. We all have biases and we all have an opportunity to say, is that a bias I want to hold on to? And is there a better space for how I can serve? Yvette, I've done the same. Learn to just put clear requests out there. It does make life easier, doesn't it? It's so beautiful. And oftentimes the story we tell ourselves is far worse than what it really feels like when we ask. And there's such a weight that's lifted when you make that ask. Mateo, back to Winnie, the better we get as leaders in crafting requests and manage frameworks, not expectations, get us to sublime outcomes. Yes, that's also important. It is not our responsibility to know how, when, or why. So don't be attached to the outcome. Don't be attached to the outcome. Keep visioning what you want and allow for something better to show up. Because when you're not attached to the outcome, when you make the ask of the universe or of another person, and that goes with the universe too, being clear on the ask to the universe, allow whatever needs to show up to serve, to show up. And yes, you will experience much more sublime space for sure. Martha, thank you. I will imagine if the best case scenario happens and what it looks like. Yeah, really give yourself a space to create some active visualization. And that's something we're going to get into tomorrow. I'm going to give you some tools. Tomorrow's Tuesday training. So we're going to get into some tools on what to do with this conversation that we're having today. And so that is a great place to start. And we're also going to do some things about active visualization and some things to change that belief. I've got an activity that is really powerful, and I may bring in one or two, more than one tomorrow, because I really want to help you in that space as well. I am also a work in progress for learning to make that ask. Aren't we all, Winnie? I just think that's so beautiful. And when we can acknowledge that, and that's what I'm going to leave on today, think about that for a moment. If we can acknowledge that every one of us is a work in progress, because here's the thing, you're either growing, you're either learning, or you're dying. And it's that simple. There's no either or. You're either working on yourself, you're either evolving, you're either growing, you're learning, you're stretching, or you're dying. And so we are all effectively a work in progress, and all of you being on this call are a work in progress, otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? And so when we think about that, and if we truly hold in our hearts that every individual is showing up from the best place they possibly can, with the best of what they have in this moment, we will offer far more compassion, kindness, grace, love, patience, openness, vulnerability, and stop making so many judgments and assumptions and lean in to really see that person. And so as always, yes, Martha, I think the Big Leap would be amazing for you. It's a quick read and it's awesome, but will really help with those upper limits. There's some great mantras in there. There's some great tools in that book as well. But as always, I just want to honor all of you for coming on here. I know that, I'm really pushing some big conversations, and I know that for you to step up. And, you know, for the most part, some of you don't know each other. Some of you have only gotten to know each other on these calls. For you to be so wide open, vulnerable, and share that you are a work in progress. Share your big observations, your ahas. I don't take that lightly, and I don't think, and I'm going to just kind of speak on behalf of the group for the fact that you stay engaged and you keep showing up. My guess is that none of you take that lightly either. And so I hope that you have just really sit in a place of gratitude and deep respect and honor how each of you show up for each other, how you're continuing to show up for yourself and creating to be that work in progress, and how you show up for me every morning. And so I love you all so much, so deeply honor and respect, and have massive gratitude for the way that you play full out. And you know what? Like I said, we're creating that ripple. We're creating that ripple because we're here, we're engaged, and we're having this courageous, connected conversation. So with that, I want you all to go out and have a great day. I also want to let you know that I have a tool, and this is going to play into things we're talking about. It's a free tool. It is my 13 strategies on how to destroy the noise. It's an ebook. If any of you are interested in getting that copy free, all you have to do is text. I'm going to make it really easy. Text, and it's 66866. And if you just text that and write yes, so the number is 66866, and type yes, you will get access to that free book. That's all. You just get access to the book. It's a lot of strategies we're going to dig into, but it gives you some posters, gives you some visuals, and it gives you some really powerful tools on how to clear out the noise. And so as we're going through this, if you want an additional resource, I just invite you to take advantage of it. It's a free resource for you. Again, it's 66866. Type the word yes, and you will get your free copy of that ebook, which is a pretty powerful guide as we continue to have these conversations. Thank you, Winnie. Thank you all, and just know I love you so much. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye. Make it an awesome Monday.